What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today it is Tuesday, which means it's time to talk through our must-add waiver wire targets for Week 7 of the fantasy football season. We're going to talk through about 15 players, all under 50% owned in ESPN leagues. The hope is that somebody out there is available for you. I get comments all the time of, Ron, none of these guys on this list are available. We're going through like 19 players here. Some of them super obvious that should have been picked up 3 weeks ago. Some of them deep stashes. We did tell you to stash Kamani Vidal last week. As always, if you enjoy, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Now, I will say, this video is going to come out much later than I usually put these out, but that allows us to talk about Ray Davis. We'll probably use him as a thumbnail. I imagine most waiver videos that came out haven't gotten to talk about Ray Davis because they came out last night. Regardless, late night, my voice is like, it's coming back to me. But was at the Jets game. It was amazing. Gut-wrenching loss, but the seats were great. The Hail Mary was super cool. And I will say, this is a very Jets moment to just say, I'm happy it was a competitive game. In an alternate reality, 2 years ago, a year ago, you could show up to a Jets game and you sit there and you watch a 7-24 beat down and you go home with your tail between your legs. That was fun. And then also completely made up for the heartbreaking loss of getting Devontae Adams. So have been in a bit of a tailspin here, went to bed super late, been on Twitter getting takes off all day, been just sort of celebrating the Devontae Adams stuff. And then, of course, the basement's been a mess. The lights aren't how they should be. Had a worker down here as well. So everything's all over the place, but now I can give you the most up-to-date waiver wire ads possible. And first up, we have Ray Davis here. Now, he was a really fun rookie prospect that we liked, a late-round target that we had preseason as well, but it was weird. Like, the team almost preferred Ty Johnson before this James Cook injury. Now, James Cook, late inactive, like, I didn't get the news until I was driving there to the game. So I couldn't even really, I had a couple of lineups where I had Ray Davis on the bench and maybe like Braylon Allen in my RB2 spot, and I really wish I could have swapped him in. It just couldn't happen, but it didn't really affect me too bad. But this was an interesting development, right? Because before the game, people were asking me, like, who should I start? And it was really close between Ty Johnson and Ray Davis because Ty Johnson is the veteran. He's been leaned on in the past, but I also believe Ray Davis is a good player, right? He's somebody he's like 24, 25 years old, old prospect out of Kentucky, but he is very polished is what I would call him. He also, he gets what's blocked. He's not the freakiest athlete of all time. He's kind of, and I don't want to do him a disservice, but he's kind of, I'm trying to think of kind of a comp that's not doing him dirty, but something in that like Devin Singletary, Zach Moss brand of do it all-purpose guy, but not like overly special. Trying to think if I can think of one off the top of my head that's also like that, but you get what I'm saying. Not the best running back in the world. There's a reason why he got drafted in the 4th round, but the reason he got drafted in the 4th round is because he can do everything. He has good size. He's like, 5'9", 215 pounds, something in that vicinity. And then also his final 2 years, or his final year at Kentucky, he had like 1,100 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, and then also 33 receptions. So he can literally do it all. He has this kind of like bowling ball compact build. And then, of course, last night comes around, and it really seemed like I don't have, of course, the, Hayden Winks, my guy. He is a dad, but I am hurting a little bit because he does have these fun tweets sometimes, and I hope I'm not missing it. But he'll show like when running backs enter into the game. It seemed like it was Ty Johnson's backfield for the first drive or two, and then Ray Davis just kept on making plays and looking really good, and he actually ends up, despite, I believe he didn't score a touchdown, he ends up with 152 yards from scrimmage. I don't know why I flashed both of these. 152 yards from scrimmage was really good last night, was moving the chains. He had, expected points added is just, if you get 3 yards on a 1st and 10, it's not great. But if you get 3 yards on a 3rd and 1, that's amazing. So it kind of scales out the yards and, rewards you for touchdowns, just helping your team win football games. And outside of Josh Allen, Ray Davis led this team, the Bills, in expected points added. He was moving the chains. He was getting the yards that they needed. He was making big plays. People missed. He was running dudes over. He had 7 missed tackles forced on the week. That was the second most behind Tyler Algier. He just looked really good. He led the team in receiving. He led the team in rushing. 20 carries, 97 yards isn't going to pop off the page, but he looked good. He was just like very annoying for the Jets. Just kept on extending drives, getting a first down. He had the fun play downfield where I think it was a free play because the Jets held, and then Josh Allen rolls out. He finds Ray Davis like 40 yards downfield. That was beautiful. So Ray Davis is involved everywhere. Ty Johnson, you can see here from the Ask FFT Dave Richard here, where Ty Johnson was out there 33% of the time, but got most of the third down stuff. Ray Davis was out there 60% of the time, got 6 of 9 of the snaps inside of the 10, which is huge. And here's the biggest question, right? He looks really good. James Cook is banged up with like a possible like turf toe kind of situation. He could miss next week and maybe even the week after that. And in that case, Ray Davis, go not blow everything on him, but blow a good chunk of fab on him. He's amazing. You can start him right away. But when James Cook comes back, what do things look like? And I think that he is one of these guys that has played himself into a bigger role. And I think that Angelo and Jacob here put it very well. Ray Davis and James Cook complement each other extremely well, interchangeable in most aspects, with Cook giving you a broader receiving profile, Davis being a more complete low red zone option. Jacob then says Cook on sweeps, outside zone, screen game, isolated versus linebackers, and pass game. Davis is the pass pro, outlet guy, short yardage, interior runs. Both backs have the versatility to avoid play tipping, but also complement each other in a great way to game plan around Diet, Gibbs, and Monty. What he means by play tipping is Ray Davis can work in on pass downs. James Cook can come in and work in on running down. So it's not like a team bringing on. I wish I had a better answer in 2024, but it would be kind of like the Raiders. You know, you bring in Zamir White, probably not going to be a pass. If you bring in Amir Abdullah, probably going to be a pass. So one of those kinds of things in terms of this year. So I actually kind of like that a lot, where we're going to see them probably be in tandem. I will say this is a waiver wire video show, but I do think this Ray Davis breakout, I hate to overreact over one game, but it's not good for James Cook, where James Cook had like the entire backfield. He was getting the red zone usage, the goal line usage, which was huge for him. Now you bring in a back who is thicker, bigger, more physical, that could take away a lot of those red zone and goal line opportunities. And he's kind of back to square one like he was last year. Now, he was still somebody that had 15, 16 points per game down the stretch with Joe Brady last year. He'll be in that same role. He'll be fine, but it takes away like top 5 running back out of his range of outcomes and kind of makes him like a high-end RB2, low-end RB1, and kind of like a diet Jahmyr Gibbs role. Now, with Ray Davis, again, he is somebody I would be getting an aggressive bid on. And I also wanted to say, for the format of this video, the first 5 or so guys we're going to talk about here are guys that I would be putting an aggressive bid on, like 15% of my fab budget or more, plus waiver wire priority, whatever kind of league you are in here. I think I have a bloody nose. No, I'm fine. We're all good. But we are on to the next one, Isaiah Guerendo. He's the next guy that I would put a pretty big fab bid on. We don't have any clarity on Jordan Mason at this point. He had an AC joint sprain, which is usually pretty mild, but it also can keep a guy out for a week or two just with like shoulder discomfort. They did have a long rest because of the Thursday night game, but I thought Singletary and Malik Neighbors would suit up because they had the long rest, and they both didn't after the Giants-Cowboys game. They come around that following Sunday after the Thursday night game and play the Bengals, and neither of them suit up. So we'll see what happens with Jordan Mason. This one I'd be a little bit more conservative on, but Isaiah Guerendo is really fun. He was a day 3 pick, but he's just a freak athlete. This is next to Jonathan Taylor. He is not as good as Jonathan Taylor. I'm just showing them as athletes over on Relative Athletic Score. 221 pounds, 4.33 speed, 41.5-inch vertical, nuts. And then also kills the shuttle and 3-cone, which are our agility drill time. So he's not, a DK Metcalf straight line mover. And that's kind of not the knock on JT, but you can see like he has yellow scores there for his shuttle and 3-cone. Not that we really care a ton, right? Like Jonathan Taylor's fine and he does what he's needed to do. We don't need him to be a cut on the dime, LaShawn McCoy, make 3 guys miss in a phone booth kind of guy. But it's cool to see Isaiah Guerendo just be a monster across the board, agility, explosives, size, speed, everything. Now, the big question is, we've seen guys like that in the past. A guy that comes to my mind is Kalen Ballage. Can they produce? And he did. He went out here. He had 10 touches to Patrick Taylor's 6 by John Daigle here. He also had 26% of the snaps. Of course, Jordan Mason played, so it's not going to be a lot, but he was much more of your between the tackles grinder, whereas Taylor was more of the pass catcher. But in this offense, that's kind of what you want. You kind of want the grinder between the tackles, getting the red zone looks, because you already have Debo, you already have Ayuk, you already have Kittle, you already have Jennings. There's not really a ton left over for the receiving back in this offense, unless if your name is Christian McCaffrey. So Patrick Taylor's a satellite back, not all that interested here, but Guerendo had 10 carries, 99 yards, 10 opportunities to Patrick Taylor's 6, or touches to Patrick Taylor's 6. He's the guy to own. It just comes down to Jordan Mason's health, and I don't think we're going to get clarity on that for quite some time. Now, after that, this is a player that just, I'm dumbfounded when I see 49.2% rostered in ESPN leagues. That's nuts. But if he's still hanging out on waivers, maybe you're in a 10-team, 5-bench league and he's just not rostered, go grab him. To me, he's the wide receiver 1 in this offense. I will have him ahead of Pittman in rest of season rankings, weekly rankings from here on out. He is not Wandale, despite having the same role, right? 5-yard, 80% slot. He's out there giving a 2+ yards per out run, 34% targets per out run, 14.2% first downs per out run is like maniac stuff. That's like a top 5 rate in the league. He moves chains. He's just a really, really good football player. And even with Richardson coming in, his 15.7 points per game at wide receiver 14 probably goes back to, instead of being like a wide receiver 2, more of a wide receiver 3, but getting that off of waivers, a year 2 breakout guy who looks really, really good, that is very valuable. Now, our next priority bid here is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. I think we mentioned him on last week's show. Or no, we didn't, because it was the Monday night game. And I honestly I didn't disregard it, but I disregarded it a little bit. But I went back and kind of thought about it. He's someone that needs to be rostered and someone you should actually be aggressive in getting. Juju Smith-Schuster, it's not sexy, but the minute Rashee Rice goes down, and Juju Smith-Schuster, who's kind of that same role of slot guy, like a diet poor man's version. He had 8 targets, 7 catches, 130 yards with no Rashee Rice. Now, it's important to note, we've already seen what this looks like when, we've already had this before of Juju in this offense attached to Patrick Mahomes, and he wasn't putting up 100 yards every game like he did in this one. I want to say, was it 2022 he played there, and he just wasn't all that good. Yeah, it was 2022. He ends up being the wide receiver 27 in overall points. He gave you 78 for 933 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he was fine, but he was a borderline flex. So I wouldn't get too crazy with 130 yards like he had on Monday night. We'll see how this goes moving forward, but Chiefs offense, a guy playing the Rashee Rice role needs to be rostered everywhere. Then we have Ty Chandler. Mentioned him last week, but still not rostered in more than 50% of leagues here. We have Aaron Jones getting hurt in London, coming back on bye. I think it's a hip injury, which are just always very weird. You have Deepak Chonas here saying it's an average 2-week injury. Week 7 is possible, but data slightly favors sitting and returning in week 8. So it's very much up in the air. And if Aaron Jones does sit, Ty Chandler, we know, is the bell cow from Ryan Heath here. When Aaron Jones left the game, he had 82% of the backfield carries, 2 of 3 of the targets. Myles Gaskin, the backup running back, had just 3 touches. And then he also quoted a Coach Speak Index quote of Kevin O'Connell provides us with another Ty Chandler signal after being asked about the RB room. But he pretty much talks glowingly about Ty Chandler. They like him a lot in that locker room. So we'll see how that goes. If Aaron Jones doesn't play, Ty Chandler, regardless of opponent, is a top 24 option. Then we have the Jaguars running backs. Still priority ads here. It's actually, I didn't mention at the top, but it's actually a really good week to either have the first waiver priority or having, a ton of fab to spend. This is a good week for it. You have Tank Bigsby, you have Dearness Johnson here. The Jaguars, of course, are a train wreck. Travis Etienne goes down with a hamstring strain, despite also having a shoulder injury. This is a blurb from Football Guys. Adam Hutchinson does a nice injury article on there after every single week, and he has Etienne returning week 9. So that would give you week 7 and week 8. Now, I came on here yesterday. It was a brutal, brutal run out for our boy Tank Bigsby, right? Because Travis Etienne goes down and he gets outsnapped by Dearness Johnson 35-17. Now, that's likely because of a blowout, right? Where it's going to be a lot of passing situations. They don't trust Tank Bigsby in these passing situations. And it was also a blowout. But the Jags are so bad, a lot of these games are going to be blowouts. So that's kind of the issue here. I have to think, Tank Bigsby's been one of the best pure rushers in the NFL. He has a 7+ yards per carry. He's been really, really good. I have to imagine that they're going to go back and give him the ball more, and he's still someone that I wouldn't shy completely away from starting. I know that was scary this past week. He didn't look good. He didn't get the usage we wanted, but if Etienne, it seems like he's not going to suit up. Bigsby's going to be a top 30 running back this week at worst, and someone you can definitely put in your RB2 spot on kind of hero RB type of teams. And then I also think that Dearness Johnson's worth holding on to. I wouldn't give a big bid on him, even though he outsnapped Tank Bigsby. He's probably going to be more of the satellite back here and not provide a ton of value. But Dearness Johnson has gone on runs in the past as the backup running back. We've seen him on the Browns recently. So he's definitely somebody in deep, deep leagues who should be rostered. And then I think this is going to be, we actually have, we're 8 deep in priority ads this week, but this is one of those ones. He's not going to be on waivers in your league, but if he is, go get Tyrone Tracy. He had 23 touches for 107 scrimmage yards this past week. Before that, 19 touches for 130. He's the RB3 over the last 2 weeks, but Singletary is going to be back very, very soon. When Singletary's back, I don't really believe, Singletary is really good boys with Brian Dable. Dable loves Singletary. He trusts him a lot back to his days in Buffalo. And Singletary looked good before he got hurt. So I doubt that he just completely relegates him to a 70-30 split in favor of Tracy. It'll probably be 50-50, and that'll make both shaky flex plays, which isn't fun, but you stash him in case if Singletary gets hurt again, or if he's hurt this week or whatever, or Tracy then builds on these performances and works his way into, a 60-40 split, a 65-35 split. I think you can earn that role, but to say he already has it without seeing a Singletary game where Singletary is healthy with Tracy after this breakout, I think is kind of too bold for me. Now, next up we have Antonio Gibson. Another one of these guys should be rostered already, but this was a rough game, right? 1.5 yards per carry. He doesn't get home versus the Texans, but the Texans are a really, really good team. He did, however, get 17 opportunities, and now he gets the Jaguars in London, who just let DeAndre Swift run all over them. They are the worst, essentially a bottom 3 defense, this Jaguars unit, and they're allowing the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. We'll see if Ramondre plays. I doubt that he travels all the way over there and plays. It seems like he's pretty much up in the air, and if he misses, Gibson will be a really, really strong start. Then our last priority ad here is Tyler Algier, another one of these guys rostered 43% of the leagues on ESPN. He should not be on waivers, but he just had a game where he had more carries than Bijan Robinson. He looked good. He scored a touchdown. This Falcons offense is really good. They're top 10 in EPA per play, and he is a flex play in terms of standalone value, and if Bijan was to ever go down, he would be an RB1 instantly. So someone that needs to be rostered everywhere. Then we'll just get past our priority ads here, and then guys that I'm not spending a ton of fab on, I'm not using my waiver wire priority on, but guys I'm definitely trying to stash where I can. First up, Sean Tucker. Really fun prospect out of Syracuse. Didn't really work out for whatever reason. Some of these small school guys just get phased out by the NFL, but he comes out here this last week after, his first year, right? He's a second-year player. His first year last year, he was buried behind Rachaad White and Chase Edmonds, which is kind of just a death sentence considering both of those guys just weren't that good running the ball last year. If you can't get out there and rush better than them, that's a big issue, but he comes out here this past week. He gets, 38% of the snaps. He goes 14 carries, 136 yards, 1 touchdown, adds some in the receiving game with a receiving touchdown, RB1 overall in the week. I still think Bucky is going to be the main running back here for as long as Rachaad White's out, but Sean Tucker, if he's going to be this good and this explosive, we'll see if this sticks, right? But, he was an absolute monster. So he is somebody that you stash. I wouldn't have a lot of confidence starting him moving forward without kind of seeing a sample here because he's still going to be behind Bucky Irving, but if he's going to just ball out like this, it's going to be very hard to keep him off the field. Then we have Kamani Vidal, who, of course, we talked about last week, but we had Gus Edwards. I think that he was put on IR, and then Kamani Vidal had 19 snaps to J.K. Dobbins 57, 10 routes to J.K. Dobbins 14, and then 6 opportunities to J.K. Dobbins 27. So he's clearly the RB2, but when we're in this range of guys we're talking about here, we just want running backs we can stash with handcuff upside, and then also it's a really good look for Vidal that he's the preferred passing down back, right? So it's not a Tank Bigsby situation where Tank Bigsby starter goes down in ETN, and now Dearness Johnson's picking up a lot of those routes and targets. Here we can see with the routes that Dobbins is the preferred between the tackles guy, whereas Vidal, 10 routes to Haskins 0 is the next guy in terms of pass catching. I don't know if they prefer him to Dobbins in passing situations just yet, but it's just a good signal that he's out there running routes on passing downs and being that guy. Then our 12th player on this list, Jaylen Warren. He's getting dropped a lot. This is the first week I believe that he's dropped below the 50% roster threshold, which is funny because it was the week that he became active. Now, he wasn't good in this most recent game next to Najee Harris, but we know what he's been in years past. Hopefully off of the injury, another week or two, we can kind of bounce back because outside of this past week, Najee has been absolutely brutal the entire year. So the hope is that there's some kind of flippening that happens. And then also, if you can climb into that lead back role, and if Russell Wilson, it's pretty bonkers that Justin Fields isn't the starting quarterback. And they're kind of just switching to Russell Wilson here. But Russell Wilson, more of a pocket passer who would check down to the running back. Now, of course, that wasn't something he did in Seattle, something he did more with the Broncos and Sean Payton, and that could just be his archetype now that he doesn't take off and scramble as much as an older quarterback. And then our last running back to talk about here is Audric Estime. He is a mustache everywhere. He's off of IR. Now, he only played in 4% of the snaps in this game, but Javonte Williams on the entire year has just been absolutely brutal. Javonte in this past game lost a fumble. He didn't do anything on the ground yet. He had 3.83 yards per carry. He lost another fumble. And I think it's only a matter of time until Sean Payton just decides, I've seen enough of Javonte Williams. Let's give Audric Estime the keys to the castle. It wouldn't shock me at all if Estime was like in that Javonte Williams role that we've seen, right, where he's like, you can see here from Dave Richards, 68% of the snaps, 11 out of 11 on third down. I don't think that he would get the third down stuff like that, but I think he can work his way up to like 50% plus of the snaps over the entire season. Then let's switch gears to the wide receivers here. Now, we have both the Packers receivers dipping below 50% rostership. Here's what I'll say. They need to be rostered for this reason. Jordan Love is really, really good. Jordan Love, only quarterback in the NFL to throw for 4+ touchdowns in 2 or more games this year. He is just an absolute monster. So when that happens and there's a really good passing offense, every single one of their passing options should be rostered. The issue is that they spread it out really thin. This is a tweet from Ryan Heath here. 18% target share for Reed, 12.5 for Tucker Kraft, 12.5 for Watson, 12.5 for Romeo Doubs. For a guy you're starting in your lineup, you would want like 20% plus. But there's so much efficiency with this passing game. And a guy like Christian Watson's so explosive, and a guy like Romeo Doubs is so nice in these contested catch situations in the end zone that they just kind of have to be rostered regardless. Christian Watson's someone that we were high on going into year 2, optimistic about heading into year 3, gets banged up early, but now that Dontavion Wicks is the one that's banged up, that opens up more for the rest of the receivers in this room. I just think both are worth rostering considering who their quarterback is and what their offensive environment is. Our next receiver that we'll talk about here is Xavier Legette. This is just another one of those cases of rookie wide receiver upside. He's a very fun player. He got hurt in week 5, comes back week 6, full-time player. Nothing crazy in terms of box score, but he did catch a touchdown in his last 2 full games. In really his only 2 games this year, running 75% or more of the snaps. I don't have the route data on me right now. He has had 19.6 PPR points and then 11.3 with a touchdown in each of those games. So he's showing some promise for what he can be down the stretch. He does get Washington this week as well, where you can certainly flex Xavier Legette this week if you need to. Then we have Demario Douglas here. Good shout out to someone in the Discord. Every single Tuesday, as soon as I post this video, I'm literally going to write up a waiver wire article for the Patreon over on patreon.com/Ron Stewart, where I pretty much break down every single player that I'm making bids on, my fab recommendations, why I like them, nuggets, stats on every single player, going like, 15 to 20 running backs deep, 15 to 20 wide receivers, and so on. That's all on Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But he brought it up, if we're excited about Jalen Polk with Drake May coming back, like why not Demario Douglas, right? Year 2 breakout candidate, had a strong year 1 where he had some really good peripherals on the rookie receiver report in terms of target earning and being efficient. And I said, you know what, you're right. So I went back and actually added him to the waiver wire article on my Patreon. And what do you know? Demario Douglas comes out here and has a pretty good day, man. He now, over 3 of his last 4 games, Demario Douglas has had 9 targets. Over his last 4, he has 14.8 PPR points, then 4.3, then 11.9, and then 21.2, where in his most recent game with Drake May, he had 9 targets, 6 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. That's about as good as you can ask for. I don't know what the ceiling is for Demario Douglas, but I want in on that, right? Over the last 4 weeks, he's at 13.1 points per game as the wide receiver for 22, and you now get a quarterback upgrade as well, which really just the last segment of players that we have here are all on the Patriots. We have Hunter Henry, and it blows my mind that he's the tight end 12, but he's rostered in only 18.2% of leagues. I know that tight ends are random, but I think Hunter Henry just has a really good role. This OC that they brought in, Van Pelt from the Browns, loves using the tight ends, and Hunter Henry was the tight end 7 on the week. He had his second highest target total of the season with 5, and Drake May is a nice upgrade. So Hunter Henry, I think, is a fine, fringe tight end 1 rest of the way. And then our last ad here. I always want to make sure that I give you guys a tight end streamer, a quarterback streamer, which I'm going to put Drake May here, and then we'll do defense streamer here in a second. But Drake May had 21.5 fantasy points in his debut. He was the QB9 on the week. That was before the Monday night game. So I'd assume more like QB10 with the way that Josh Allen played. That's about as good as you could ask for. He gets the Jags this week, who allow the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. That's where Caleb Williams looked really good. And then Drake May's superpower here is his scrambling. Now, I talked about this on 10 Lessons Learned, but quarterback scrambling and rushing upside is tendency more than it is ability when it comes to fantasy football, right? Like, of course, you have running backs that are really good at scrambling, but or quarterbacks that are really good at scrambling, maybe they don't use it as much. They only use it, they take it out of their back pocket when they need to, kind of like Andrew Luck when he was playing. Where on the other side, Cam Newton's combine was like potentially worse than Andrew Luck's. Not that Cam Newton wasn't athletic. Andrew Luck was just a freak, despite, not really playing that play style. Like, for sure, he was physical. He would take hits, pop back up. He would definitely lower his shoulder from time to time, but he wasn't doing Cam Newton 10-plus rushing touchdown seasons. It's just not how that worked. Drake May here scrambled. It's a small sample. It's like 50 or so plus dropbacks. He scrambled 13% of his dropbacks, which is smack dab between Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. That's about as good as you could ask for when it comes to like that Konami rushing quarterback upside. So if you're in a down bad spot, again, he gets a smash matchup versus the Jaguars. He scrambles a ton, and those are two things that work for fantasy success. And then defensive streamers. As always, shout out to Subverter Down. I don't know the guy. I don't have a promo code, but he has a website where he does defenses, kickers, and quarterbacks every week in terms of projections. And here I just read it out the guys who are owned in over 50% of ESPN leagues. You have the Bills versus the Titans, Jaguars versus Patriots, Rams versus Raiders, Bengals at Browns, Saints versus Broncos. I will say, I'm not a defensive guy, so take my opinion with a grain of salt here. There's no yards per out run when it comes to defense, but the Jaguars have been absolutely brutal. But if you think that they're going to beat up on a rookie quarterback, you can absolutely go ahead, right? Like Drake May did have 3 turnovers last week. The Rams are another defense that's been bad, but they get a good matchup versus a bad Raiders offense. And same thing with the Bengals. So those 3 are shaky. Jaguars, Rams, and Bengals are all been bad defenses this year, but they also get amazing matchups. I would say like the 2 top dogs for me are Bills and Saints, but they might be rostered in most of your guys' leagues. Now, that is going to do it for us today. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. I do promise next week we'll have a more normal schedule, right? The work in the basement starting to get done here. We also won't be at a Jets game on next Monday night, so I will get this video out at a timely manner. Because this video is going to get up at like 6 p.m. Eastern. I imagine a lot of you guys have already set waivers, but hope that this helps you guys out. As always, on the Patreon, I'll have a fab article coming out in the next hour or so. You can check that out on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But if you can't support there, just leave a like, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm